Have you ever walked away from a casual coffee meetup feeling utterly drained, as if your energy had been siphoned out of you? The conversation wasn't tense or confrontational. Nothing overtly negative happened, yet you're left feeling like a deflated balloon, completely spent. Now think about the opposite, those rare golden interactions with people who leave you buzzing with inspiration, clarity, and vitality, even after hours of deep conversation. It's as if they've tapped into some invisible power source, recharging you instead of depleting you. What creates this stark contrast in how people affect our energy? This very question captivated Carl Jung, one of history's most profound psychological minds. The Swiss psychiatrist and pioneer of analytical psychology dedicated his life to unraveling the mysteries of the human psyche, including the subtle, often unconscious ways energy is exchanged between individuals. For Jung, this wasn't just about personality differences or social dynamics. It was a deeper, more intricate phenomenon tied to the hidden forces of the unconscious mind and the psychological undercurrents that shape our connections. In this exploration, we'll uncover Jung's groundbreaking insights into why some people leave you feeling drained while others leave you invigorated, and, more importantly, how you can navigate these energy dynamics in your own life. To truly grasp Jung's perspective, we'll delve into the fascinating interplay of energy, psychology, and the invisible threads that bind us in human relationships. To understand Jung's perspective on energy-draining people, we first need to grasp his concept of psychic energy, which he called libido. When most people hear the word libido, they think of Freud and sexual energy, but Jung expanded this concept dramatically. For Jung, libido wasn't just sexual energy. It was the vital force that animates our entire psyche. It's the fundamental energy that fuels our thoughts, emotions, creativity, and connections with others. Jung saw this energy as flowing constantly throughout our psyche, moving between consciousness and the unconscious. Powering our mental processes like blood powers our physical body. When this energy is blocked, depleted, or misdirected, psychological problems arise. One of Jung's most profound insights was recognizing that relationships function as energy exchanges. Every interaction involves a transfer of this psychic energy between people. Some exchanges are balanced and mutually beneficial. Both people feel energized afterward. Others are drastically unbalanced. One person walks away revitalized, while the other feels depleted. Think about your own relationships. Who leaves you feeling energized? Who consistently leaves you feeling drained? According to Jung, these feelings aren't just subjective impressions. They reflect actual psychological processes occurring beneath the surface of your interactions. But what exactly is happening during these energy-draining encounters? What psychological mechanisms explain why some people seem to suck the life force right out of you? Jung identified several key factors that contribute to these dynamics, shedding light on the hidden forces at play in our relationships. The psychological mechanisms behind energy drain are complex and deeply rooted in the unconscious mind, as Jung revealed through his groundbreaking work. The first mechanism is projection. Jung believed that we all have aspects of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, parts of our personality that feel uncomfortable, shameful, or threatening. Instead of facing these elements, we unconsciously project them onto others. Energy-draining people often engage in massive projection. They refuse to own their negative emotions, insecurities, or problems, instead unconsciously offloading them onto the people around them. When you interact with such a person, you're not just dealing with them. You're dealing with all their unacknowledged psychological material. No wonder you feel exhausted. Imagine a colleague who's deeply insecure about their competence but refuses to acknowledge this feeling. Instead of owning their insecurity, they constantly criticize your work, question your decisions, and undermine your confidence. What's really happening? They're projecting their own fears onto you and making you carry the emotional weight they refuse to bear. The second mechanism is emotional contagion. Emotions spread between people like viruses. When someone is filled with anxiety, resentment, or fear, these emotions radiate outward, infecting the psychological space around them. This isn't just poetic language. Research in neuropsychology has identified mirror neurons that cause us to unconsciously mimic and internalize the emotional states of those around us. When you spend time with someone dominated by negative emotions, your brain literally starts to mirror their neurological patterns. Your nervous system begins operating as if you were experiencing those negative emotions yourself. But perhaps Jung's most powerful explanation for energy drainage involves his concept of the shadow. The shadow is Jung's term for the repressed, denied aspects of ourselves, the parts of our personality that we refuse to acknowledge. It contains qualities that don't fit with our conscious self-image. If you see yourself as kind, your shadow contains your capacity for cruelty. If you identify as rational, your shadow holds your irrational impulses. When someone hasn't integrated their shadow, when they refuse to acknowledge and accept these disowned parts of themselves, they unconsciously act them out in ways that drain others. For instance, someone who denies their own anger might not express it directly. Instead, they might engage in passive-aggressive behavior, create drama, or subtly undermine others. Being around such a person becomes exhausting because you're constantly responding to both their conscious communication and the unconscious shadow material leaking into the interaction. As Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The same applies to relationships. Until people make their unconscious patterns conscious, these patterns will direct their interactions and drain everyone around them. Based on Jung's insights, understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward protecting your energy in fostering healthier, more balanced connections. Based on Jung's insights, we can identify several archetypal patterns of energy-draining people, figures you'll likely recognize from your own life. First is the victim. This person has embraced powerlessness as their identity. Nothing is ever their fault or responsibility. They constantly share their problems but reject solutions, seeking pity rather than change. The victim drains your energy by pulling you into endless cycles of rescuing and enabling, while never taking responsibility for their own well-being. As Jung might explain it, the victim has rejected their own inner strength and capacity for change, projecting that rejected power onto others and then resenting them for having what the victim denies in themselves. Next is the narcissist, perhaps the most notorious energy vampire. The narcissist demands constant attention, validation, and emotional labor. Conversations always revolve around them. They need admiration but rarely offer genuine reciprocation. They may seem charming initially, but relationships with them become increasingly one-sided. In Jungian terms, the narcissist has failed to develop a genuine relationship with their own inner world. Instead, they use others as mirrors to reflect back a grandiose self-image, leaving those around them emotionally depleted. These archetypes, the victim and the narcissist, are just two examples of how unintegrated aspects of the psyche manifest in relationships. By recognizing these patterns, we can better understand why certain interactions leave us feeling drained and take steps to protect our energy. Jung's work reminds us that the key to healthier relationships lies not only in understanding others, but also in confronting and integrating the hidden parts of ourselves. These archetypes of energy-draining people reveal the hidden dynamics at play in our relationships. The narcissist drains everyone around them in their desperate quest for external validation, leaving others emotionally depleted. Then there's the martyr, who sacrifices constantly for others but uses these sacrifices as currency to purchase guilt and obligation. "After all I've done for you," becomes their unspoken refrain. The martyr drains you by creating impossible debts that can never be repaid, turning what appears to be generosity into subtle emotional manipulation. From Jung's perspective, the martyr has rejected their own needs and desires, projecting them onto others, and then resenting those others for having needs at all. Next is the manipulator, who uses subtle tactics like guilt, fear, or obligation to maintain control over others' emotions. They're masters at making you feel responsible for their feelings. Interactions with manipulators leave you feeling confused, doubtful, and depleted because you're constantly navigating hidden agendas rather than engaging in authentic exchange. Jung would see the manipulator as someone who has denied their own vulnerability, projecting their fears onto others, and then controlling those others to manage their own unacknowledged anxiety. Finally, there's the general category that modern pop psychology calls the energy vampire. People who seem to unconsciously sap vitality from those around them. They might monopolize conversations, dramatize minor problems, create crises, or simply fill the room with such nervous, fragmented energy that everyone feels scattered and drained afterward. What all these types share is a fundamental imbalance in energy exchange. They take far more than they give, often without conscious awareness of what they're doing. Now here's a challenging question, one that forces us to look inward. Could you at times unknowingly embody some of these energy-draining traits? Jung's work reminds us that self-awareness is the first step toward breaking these patterns, both in ourselves and in our relationships. By recognizing these archetypes, we can better protect our energy and foster healthier, more balanced connections. Jung would certainly ask, why do these energy-draining people keep appearing in your life? He believed that our outer relationships reflect our inner psychological state. If certain patterns keep repeating in your relationships, it's not random bad luck. Something in your own psyche is attracting or allowing these dynamics. First, unresolved emotional wounds often attract people who will reactivate those wounds. If you grew up with emotionally unavailable parents, you might unconsciously seek out emotionally unavailable partners. The psyche has a strange tendency to recreate its traumas in an unconscious attempt to finally heal them. As Jung put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people who drain you most effectively may be activating your deepest unresolved wounds. Second, people-pleasing tendencies and weak boundaries create a perfect environment for energy vampires to thrive. If you struggle with saying no, setting limits, or prioritizing your own needs, you're essentially hanging out a sign that says, "Drain me, I won't stop you." Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming a whole, differentiated self. Without strong boundaries and a clear sense of self, you become a magnet for those who will exploit your energy. In essence, the energy-draining people in your life may be mirrors, reflecting back the parts of yourself that need healing, integration, or strengthening. By understanding these patterns and addressing your own inner imbalances, you can break the cycle and create healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Jung's wisdom reminds us that the key to transforming our outer world lies in confronting and healing our inner world. Without this sense of self, boundaries remain weak and others can easily exploit your emotional resources. Third, a lack of self-awareness makes you vulnerable to draining relationships. If you don't recognize your own patterns and triggers, you can't protect yourself from people who activate them. You'll keep falling into the same dynamics, wondering why you feel so depleted, without seeing your own role in the pattern. Finally, and perhaps most profoundly, Jung would point to your own shadow. Sometimes what drains us most in others is a reflection of something we've rejected in ourselves. The qualities that irritate us most in others are often the very qualities we refuse to acknowledge in our own personality. For instance, if you're exhausted by someone's neediness, consider whether you've rejected your own needs and vulnerability. If someone's anger drains you, examine your relationship with your own capacity for healthy anger and self-assertion. As Jung wrote, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Energy-draining relationships offer a painful but potentially transformative opportunity to recognize disowned aspects of yourself. Now for the crucial question, what can you do to break these patterns and protect your energy? Jung's insights provide a roadmap for reclaiming your vitality and fostering healthier connections. By addressing your inner wounds, strengthening your boundaries, and integrating your shadow, you can transform these draining dynamics into opportunities for growth and self-discovery. The practical question is, how can you protect yourself from energy-draining people and relationships? Jung's psychology offers several powerful strategies. First, develop greater self-awareness. Pay attention to your energy levels after interactions. Which people consistently leave you feeling depleted? What specific behaviors trigger this depletion? What patterns do you notice across different draining relationships? Journal about these questions, track your energy levels throughout the day, and notice what Jung called complexes, emotional hotspots that, when triggered, lead to disproportionate energy loss. Second, set clear boundaries. Jung believed that proper psychological development requires the establishment of a strong ego, a healthy sense of self with clear boundaries. Without these boundaries, your psychic energy leaks out to anyone who demands it. Learning to say no without guilt is essential, as is recognizing when someone is crossing your emotional boundaries. Phrases like, "I can't take that on right now," "I need to think about that before deciding," or simply, "That doesn't work for me," can protect your energy from inappropriate demands. Third, actively manage your energy. Jung was fascinated by Eastern practices like meditation, which help cultivate inner balance and resilience. Incorporate practices that replenish your energy, such as mindfulness, deep breathing, or spending time in nature. These practices not only restore your vitality, but also strengthen your ability to remain centered in the face of draining interactions. By combining self-awareness, strong boundaries, and intentional energy management, you can shield yourself from energy-draining dynamics and create space for relationships that uplift and inspire you. Jung's wisdom reminds us that protecting your energy isn't just about avoiding others. It's about cultivating a deeper connection with yourself. When you honor your own needs and boundaries, you naturally attract healthier, more balanced connections. Jung saw practices like meditation as techniques for directing and conserving psychic energy. To protect your energy, develop your own daily practices for restoration. Meditation can help clear psychic static and replenish your energy. Spend time in nature to reconnect with primal, restorative forces. Engage in creative expression to channel energy in life-giving directions. Incorporate physical movement to prevent energy stagnation. And most importantly, intentionally spend time with people who energize rather than deplete you. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, do your shadow work. As Jung emphasized, the parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge don't disappear. They operate from the unconscious, often attracting exactly the energy-draining relationships we're trying to avoid. Shadow work involves looking honestly at the qualities you reject in yourself. What traits do you most despise in others? What aspects of yourself do you try to hide? What emotions do you consider unacceptable? By acknowledging and integrating these disowned parts, you become less reactive to them in others. You develop what Jung called wholeness, not perfection, but the capacity to encompass the full range of human qualities without being controlled by them. As your relationship with your own shadow heals, you'll find yourself less susceptible to energy drainage. You'll recognize projection for what it is, set boundaries more effectively, and gravitate naturally toward balanced, mutually energizing relationships. As we've explored today, protecting your energy isn't just about avoiding draining people. It's about cultivating self-awareness, strengthening your boundaries, and integrating the hidden parts of yourself. By doing so, you create a life filled with relationships that uplift and inspire rather than deplete and drain. Jung's timeless wisdom reminds us that the key to transforming our outer world lies in confronting and healing our inner world. Energy drainage in relationships isn't just a subjective feeling. It reflects real psychological processes identified by Carl Jung decades ago. When someone leaves you feeling depleted, powerful unconscious mechanisms are at work: projection, emotional contagion, and shadow dynamics. We've identified the archetypal energy-draining personalities you might encounter: the victim, the narcissist, the martyr, the manipulator, and the general energy vampire. Each depletes others through different patterns, but all create fundamentally imbalanced energy exchanges. We've also looked inward, considering why we might attract or allow these draining relationships. Our own wounds, weak boundaries, lack of self-awareness, and unacknowledged shadow aspects all play crucial roles in perpetuating these patterns. Most importantly, we've explored practical strategies for protection, developing self-awareness, setting boundaries, managing your energy, and doing the essential inner work that Jung called individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness. Remember that energy exchange happens in all relationships, but it should be relatively balanced over time. When you consistently feel depleted after seeing someone, your body and psyche are sending you important messages. Don't ignore them. As Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." By becoming more conscious of the unconscious dynamics in your relationships, you gain the power to transform them. You can choose connections that nourish rather than deplete you. You can recognize projection and emotional manipulation for what they are. You can set boundaries that protect your vital energy. I'd love to hear about your experiences with energy-draining people and what strategies have helped you deal with them. Have you encountered any of the archetypes we discussed today? What techniques have you found most effective for protecting your energy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, your energy is precious. You have every right to protect it, direct it, and share it only with those who respect its value. As Jung might say, it's not just your right, but your responsibility on the path to becoming fully yourself.